The Canucks come up a goal short to open their 5-game road trip in Montreal as they fall 5-4 in overtime. It's time for Rink Wide Vancouver. And we welcome you inside our Rink Wide Vancouver studios in downtown Vancouver. Jeff Pettersson along with Irfan Ghaffar. And we always say, we got a lot to talk about, Irf. We got a lot to talk about. The captain was back, the start of a road trip. This was supposed to be the easy one with what's to come out of the road for the Vancouver Canucks. But hey, full credit to the Montreal Canadiens. They've won 8 of their last 10 hockey games, one of the hottest teams in the National Hockey League. They needed overtime, but they defeat the Canucks by a score of 5-4. A little bit of everything, a lot of offense, and a lot of storylines. Rink Wide brought to you in part by Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Be sure to use code NATION when you open an account. And I imagine the chat is already hopping as the Canucks take a lead to the third period. And, well, you know the story. We've seen this way too many times from this hockey club. They let it get away. Now they did battle back, get it to overtime, so they get a single point. Overtime for the 9th time in the last 18 hockey games. Irf, this is just part of who the Vancouver Canucks are right now. All these tight games, and unfortunately for them, they keep coming up short. Far more often than they find a way to grab the bonus point that's on the table.
Yeah, chat's lit right now, as you just said. We'll get to a lot of people's submissions as to what they want to talk about from this hockey game. But yeah, as you mentioned it, a lot of loser points for the Vancouver Canucks this season. It seems like, they just want to get these games to overtime and take their chances. A bad penalty late in the game from Niels Höglander. We've seen him do that often this season. I know you put out a stat there on X. He's more penalties than any other forward on this team, taken by a lot. So there's a lot of stuff to get into there. Goaltending, maybe not the best. Lankinen had to be brilliant, made some unbelievable saves.
Strange night for Lankinen,
but still gives up 5.
And absolutely a talking point, especially with the uncertainty around the other guy that is supposed to take on some of the workload here. A goal, and a nice one from Jonathan Lekkerimaki, an incredible 20-second stint there where he sets up JT Miller and then scores his second in just 6 NHL games. So you love that from the youngster back in the National Hockey League and on the scoreboard. Got absolutely trucked in the first minute. Caden Gooley setting the tone. There were a bunch of hard hits in this hockey game, but I don't know that there was anyone harder than Gooley. Absolutely flattening Lekkerimaki, but hey, picked himself up, dusted himself off, playing on the line with JT Miller and Brock Besser. And what a night for JT Miller. We've been waiting. The Canucks have been waiting. I'm sure JT has been waiting pretty much all season for a night like this one. And what sucks most is that it goes in vain. It's a loss. Yes, It's another point, but they need wins. And they just haven't had enough of them. Just one since Christmas now. In 5 games, and people were saying, hey, well, no Quinn Hughes, no Elias Pettersson. Well, guess what? Quinn Hughes is back, and, he left his mark in this hockey game. He picks up a couple of points, but in the end, you give up 5, you're not going to win very often, and that is the case. And even with the captain bolstering the blue line, still issues galore on the Canuck defense. And, as a result, they start the road trip with an overtime loss. 5-4 is the final. The Canucks are 18-12-9 now on the season. So, yeah, you do the math there. Running out of fingers, but that's 9 of those loser points. They're 3-8 in games decided in overtime and 4-9 including shootouts. So 18-12-9 now on the season. Out on the road, still better than respectable at 11-4-3, but they were 10-2 at one point as the road team, and now there's a bunch more in the lost columns because, again, they're just coming up short far too often here. And that was the case again. Strange night. Lots of ways to come at this thing. As Irv said, the chat's going wild. Hey, we always tell you about our Super Chat charity partner as well, BC Mental Health Foundation. If you want to make sure your question or comment gets through to us here on Rink Wide, hit us up with the Super Chat. Proceeds from the Super Chats go to the BC Mental Health Foundation, changing the face of mental health and addiction by supporting breakthroughs in care, public understanding, research, and knowledge exchange. I want to double back to Nils Höglander because
that is why the chat is going crazy right now, but yes.
And he makes a terrific play to set up JT Miller, wins a puck battle behind the net, circles around, finds Miller in the soft spot midway through the first period. Brutal start for the Canucks. The goalie hit leads to an opportunity. Oh, yeah, somebody might want to check Cole Caulfield in the slot there. His 22nd of the season opens the scoring 1 minute and 7 seconds in, and it felt like the game in Seattle last week where the Canucks were down early. But, you know, they found a way to stabilize, and then Höglander sets up Miller. A sign of things to come. JT was just getting started there, but there was some good from Nils Höglander. He has 3 points in 5 games since Christmas. I mean, the point total is brutal. It's 8 now. Obviously, just the 2 goals, and he's up to 32 games now, I think, without a goal. So, yeah, I mean, it's feeling like a lost season, but there has been some signs of life offensively, and so you're thinking, okay, maybe it's coming along slowly, and all right, you don't like the penalty, fine, but he's without a stick. He's running around in the final minute of play in his own zone, and there was enough there for the official to put his arm in the air.
That's the thing. It may have been soft, Canucks fans, and people looking are probably being a weak penalty, whatever it was, job by the ref. You know, they didn't do it, but he put himself in that position for the referee to make that call. And the referees are going to call that. I'm sorry, I don't care who you are. The referees are going to call that every single time if you put yourself in the position to make that. It's like some Tyler Myers tripping penalties that people want to talk about, that they're very soft and things like that. If you put yourself in a position for the referee to make the call, almost 100% of the time the ref's making that call.
So Höglander's in the box. Final 34 seconds of regulation time. Gets to overtime. Canucks, secured a single point, but they weren't out of dodge and never really did get out of dodge. Ultimately, 4-on-3 power play. Habs work it around. Suzuki is 12th of the year. Hudson and Caulfield get the assist. 48 seconds. The only shot of overtime. And that was it. Bam. Back of the net. Kevin Lankinen. And whatever. I mean, why not? Challenge. You're hoping that the offense officials see something that clearly wasn't there. It was a goal. It stood. And it was game over. As you like to say, over at that point.
OVH, yeah,
48 seconds in, so another overtime loss for the Canucks. And, penalty kill gives up 2 in this night. Habs win the special teams battle, and they win the hockey game. And the Canucks gave up an early power play goal in the third to Kirby Dach, and then Suzuki on the 4-on-3 power play. So Montreal's best player stepped up. Again, we'll talk more about JT Miller, but as you look at the difference makers in this hockey game, Suzuki's all over the score sheet. Lane Hudson is going to be another Quinn Hughes. Yeah. You can just see it already. A ton of fun to watch, hard to play against. He was dialed in. Kirby Dach scores. We talked about that. Caulfield with the 22nd of the season. And this Montreal team, don't sleep on them. They're a ton of confidence right now. Top-end guys are going. They didn't get great goaltending either. This was not a night for goaltending, either Lankinen or Sam Montembeault, but at the end of the night, Montembeault gets the victory, and Kevin Lankinen is saddled with another loss. And I pointed this out on X as well, because it doesn't feel like this, but Kevin Lankinen has 1 win in his last 7 starts.
Yep. Not playing very good hockey right now. But
he got a win in relief with Thatcher Demko, so I want to be clear there that there's a second victory in there. But in terms of his starts, nights where he's tabbed to be the guy, 1 win in his last 7. And again, it doesn't really feel like it, but the numbers don't lie in this case. And just, when you give up 5 as a goaltender, there has to be a few more saves along the way.
Yeah, and I want to point out to someone in our chat, Stu says the Canucks gave up 5. Lankinen is not associated with that defensive effort. And He is, because he's a goalie. He's the last line of defense for sure. But I think that when you look at it, it is the defense, Jeff. It is the focal point of this team, and there's so many holes on that blue line. There's the roster construction on the defensive end for this Vancouver Canucks team is not good. In what world is Noah Juulsen on the ice and Erik Brannstrom is still not? I don't get it. Rick Tocchet being outcoached again. Right, I really do believe that. I think that there's been a lot of times where we've seen management take some ownership and players take ownership, and Rick Tocchet, for guys that he's putting into the game, and it's his choice at the end of the day of who he's going to put in. Why is Erik Brannstrom? He's not going to make the difference every single game, but he gives you a better chance to win the hockey game on more nights than not than a guy like Noah Juulsen does. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And look, a bit of a homecoming for Vincent Desharnais. Lots of questions to the coach about the way he's been playing. And he had been playing better of late, but he got crushed. The underlying numbers, shot attempts were 22-8 in Montreal's favor when Desharnais on the ice. Wasn't a whole lot better for Derek Forbort, Carson Soucy. Down on the list you go. And, who's the one defenseman that's in the positive when it comes to individual Corsi? And it's, of course, Quinn Hughes, who returns to the lineup after missing 4 games, picked up his 43rd point of the season, and then added his 44th as well. So he's in on 2 of the 4 goals that the Canucks score, playing with a very clearly bandaged and braced hand. We saw it a number of times on the Prime broadcast. And so, yes, he's in the lineup, but he's clearly not anywhere close to 100%. Didn't seem to be limiting him. Last game that he played, he had 2 assists as well. So he's still able to deliver, which again just speaks volumes about the kind of player he is, what he means to this hockey club. Ends up logging 26 minutes and 15 seconds of ice time. So they're happy to have the captain back, but he's just one guy. And even if he plays half the game, it means that there's 30 minutes that he's not on the ice, and that's where this team continues to run into trouble. So I'm with you on Brannstrom. I don't get it. Guillaume Brisebois was the healthy scratch tonight along with Brannstrom, and we'll see what the roster looks like. Elias Pettersson getting close to getting back in maybe for Wednesday. We'll find out. He doesn't play defense, but there could be a roster move. Brisebois may get sent back to Abbotsford. We'll see what happens there. Whatever the case, the Canucks just didn't have enough against a Montreal team that we said is feeling it right now, and this Canucks team is not. It is reeling. The single point, again, on a night when those other teams around the playoff bar aren't playing, so the Canucks do pick up a little bit of ground on teams like Calgary and Utah and the St. Louis Blues, and the Canucks, for the time being, have 45 points from their 39 games, 18, 12, and 9, but they're 2 points up on Calgary, 3 in front of St. Louis, 4 ahead of the Utah Hockey Club. And we'll see where it goes. Again, this road trip into Washington, into Carolina, back-to-back, into Toronto on Saturday, and then, you got Winnipeg a week from now, next Tuesday, in fact, just over a week from now. So difficult road trip, and it's not just a road trip. When they come back off the road, L.A., Edmonton, Edmonton, Washington again. So this is a really difficult stretch, and it starts with a single point, but a third-period lead. It's just becoming such a common refrain, and they got 7 shots on goal, so it wasn't like they sat back and once they're down 4-3, obviously they had to push to get back on even terms, but how many times? They had 20 shots on goal. 20 shots on goal. This is the National Hockey League, and it just feels like this club is reducing its margin on a nightly basis. 20 feels like sort of the norm now. I know the other night against Nashville, I think they got to 27, but they didn't have any shots over the final 10 minutes of that hockey game when they were down and trying to find the equalizer. And here it's 4 in the first period, 9 in the second, 7 in the third period added up, and that is 20 shots on goal.
It's almost like we have to start having the conversation. Look at the offensive talent that this team does have, minus Quinn Hughes, right? You've got Brock Besser, you've got JT Miller, you've got Elias Pettersson, I know who didn't play, but beyond that, does this roster have enough guys that can put north of 25 shots on net on a consistent basis when you really do the digging of the players that you expect to see more from? I know Jake DeBrusk scored, but that's the first time we've seen him in quite some time, right? Connor Garland, I know he had a chance to bury, he had a couple chances to score goals, but really was non-existent as well. Dakota Joshua out of the lineup again. A great game from Jonathan Lekkerimaki, right? Being able to score the goal and get involved and be there, but you're not going to see that every single night. So this team is so dependent on Quinn Hughes to run its offense that it's almost like the offensive guys depend on him to do it from the back end always. They're not like the old Tampa Bay Lightning where almost 50% of your offense can come from your defensemen. They're just not good enough defensively to have those types of efforts. So your offensive guys have to pick it up. Rick Tocchet just speaking right now. I just want to read a quote. He said, "There's moments when you need a guy to make a play. When a team puts pressure on us, we just start slapping pucks around." That's 100% factual.
And if you go back and look at Lane Hutson, the 4-3 goal that comes 4 minutes after Kirby Dach had tied this game, it's a bad bounce off Quinn Hughes. It's unlucky. But terrific players, and Hutson is clearly one of them. They find a way. But if you trace that sequence back, and I think it's Max Sasson who's had a nice rookie run here, and it's hard to almost single him out. But to Rick Tocchet's point, that puck is in the slot, and it just gets chopped to the sideboards instead of out and forcing the Habs to regroup. Over to the side doesn't accomplish anything because Hutson just skates onto it and wheels down low and then puts it in front and banks it in off Quinn Hughes. So, you don't lose as often in overtime as the Canucks do without guys just not stepping up in the big moments. And yeah, it's just it's becoming commonplace for this group. And you talk about Jake DeBrusk. Yeah, great. He scored a power play goal and it tied a game, and ultimately that gets them the single point. But this was a forgettable night. His Corsi for 9%. The shot attempts were 20-2 in favor of the Habs when Jake DeBrusk was out there on a line with Connor Garland and Pius Suter. Garland was on the ice for 2 of the even strength goals that the Montreal Canadiens scored. Mm-hmm. So 2 power play goals, scored 3 at 5-on-5. Garland's on the ice for 2 of those. And Pius Suter has just gone missing. He's gone completely invisible. And he was productive early in the season. And, the Canucks were winning more than they were losing back then because they were getting contributions from guys like Pius Suter. And I'm not going to blame him on the overtime goal. He's out there as one of the penalty killers. Penalty killing has generally been pretty good for the Canucks, but gives up 2 in this hockey game. So it wasn't as good as it had to be or needed to be. Whatever the case for Pius Suter, it's strange because everybody was loving the versatility and the Swiss Army knife and everything else, and it's still there, but he's gone 13 games now without a goal.
Yeah. Rick Tocchet, this one we can safely say isn't about Elias Pettersson because he didn't play. We just need more guys when the pressure hits to participate and meet pressure with pressure. I feel like Rick Tocchet said that quote 10 times this season.
Yeah.
That almost exact one.
He loves his meet pressure with pressure. Yeah. And unfortunately, just too many guys. It's not happening. But Jeff, you go back to, you brought up coaching. And I think that he's not on the ice, obviously. Yeah. But a lot of people, again, when Lane Hutson scores to take it from, the Canucks had a 3-1 lead midway through the hockey game. And then the Habs score 3 straight. Goalie midway through the second, make it 3-2. But you get to the third period, you're up 3-2. A third period lead. Last year was money in the bank for the Vancouver Canucks. Here, Dach scores in the power play with Kiefer Sherwood off for slashing. And then Lane Hutson scores. And my timeline was filled again with does Rick Tocchet understand he can call an in-game timeout?
Well, that's what I've asked you so many times this season.
I feel like we talk about it every time a lead gets away.
Yeah.
I don't know if it would be the answer, but how about trying to find out if it would be the answer? Because it just isn't something that he believes in for whatever reason. And I do wonder if it's costing his hockey club points in the long run. Is there a game somewhere along the line here where the momentum was getting away from the Canucks that he could have stemmed the tide a little bit? And I think it's a fair question to ask. Ultimately, we'll never know. It's a hypothetical. Yep. But he's got so few tools at his disposal. Once the game is underway, he can monitor ice time and bench guys and double shift guys. But he has this timeout that at some point could settle a game down, and it's like he flat out refuses. And I do wonder if it's come back to cost the Canucks. I'm not saying they lost this game because he didn't call his timeout, but this is, it's not a one-off. It's not something that, maybe should have happened here or there. As you said, I feel like we talk about it an awful lot.
Yeah.
And I see it in my timeline, so we're not the only ones that are talking about this. Let's get to JT.
Yeah.
Because, again, we all know the story with JT Miller. It's just been underwhelming all season long. It started with an injury, the frustration built, the personal leave, no goals in forever against an NHL goaltender. The only 2 that he had scored in recent memory were both into empty nets. Here, big goal to tie the game, leaned into a one-timer, the setup by Höglander, And then swoops in after Jonathan Lekkerimaki kind of whiffed on his opportunity on the partial breakaway there, but Miller in the right spot to scoop a backhand over the glove of Montembeault, and all of a sudden, hey, JT Miller with a 2-goal game. We're thinking hat-trick watch.
Yeah.
And I had to look it up. The last time JT Miller had a multiple-goal game, he had 3, and that was in that crazy 10-7 game in Minnesota last February, so he doesn't ultimately get to 3 goals, but damn, he had a night. He had 4 points. He was in on all 4 of the Canuck goals. He gets an assist on the Lekkerimaki goal. Nice play off the end wall to spring Besser and then ahead to Lekkerimaki. And then, off that downhill left flank on the power play, makes the play to Jake DeBrusk for basically a empty netter there. Miller does all the work. He also set up Connor Garland on a power play. Late in the second period, the vision to, down low, see Garland kind of stepping off the right boards. JT had it going on. And so it's there.
He had it. Yeah.
It's still there. Haven't seen it nearly enough all season long. And people have been hard on him for all the drama and everything else. But, hey, on a night like tonight, this guy looked like he was the leader for the Vancouver Canucks. He wanted to will this team to victory. But, again, it's hard to overcome 5 goals the other way, plus just a night where too many guys, and we talked about DeBrusk earlier, another quiet night for Brock Besser. I know he gets an assist on the Lekkerimaki goal, but 1 shot on goal for Brock on a night when pucks were going in. This wasn't a banner night for goaltenders. Brock Besser's got to be shooting more than 2 attempts and 1 on net, so it was quiet the other night against Nashville. He was quiet and had his ice time reduced in Seattle. Wasn't that long ago he was feeling it. He had 6 goals in a 4-game stretch, but just you'd like a little more consistency, and he is one of the leaders in this hockey club, and you just don't want to see Brock Besser having too many quiet nights like he did in this one.
Well, especially when the offense is pretty easy to come by, it looked like, right? You'd want your stars to be your stars. That's why I go back to my point on how many offensive guys do the Canucks really have, right? And when they're not there and they're not playing well, this team's going to lose a lot more games because they depend so heavily on Quinn Hughes. And Quinn Hughes obviously dealing with a hand injury. We know that. It was showed apparently on the broadcast a couple of times. So definitely could see that as well. But yeah, just going back to our chat, Jeff, a lot of people with definitely a lot of different things and opinions, most on the defense. Mm-hmm. I really do think most on the defense, but I'm going to pose a question in here. Are the Canucks a good hockey team? Like, where are we at with that?
Not with this defense core.
Kind of assessment.
Not with this defense core. And we've said that. And obviously, they get Hughes back, but they're still without Hronek. And you realize the difference that one top-end defender can make. I mean, it just pushes everybody back. Hronek would play 25 minutes in a game like this one. Is he a perfect player? No, but in those
better than what they got.
Pressure situations that Rick Tocchet talks about, more often than not, he's going to win battles. He's going to make plays. And so, I mean, the way this group is currently constructed, no, I mean, there's some individual talent. It hasn't risen to the occasion on enough nights this season outside of Quinn Hughes, but, hopefully this is the start of something that, kind of gets JT Miller's blood flowing and reminds him that he can be a difference maker in these hockey games. And, only up to 8 goals in the season. But on a night like tonight, the least of the Canucks' concerns
was JT
Miller. In fact, that leads us into our 3 stars here on Rink Wide Vancouver as we take a look at the 3 stars as selected by RDS in the building. Lane Hutson, Nick Suzuki, and JT Miller in that order. Same players, just a slightly different order.
Yeah.
Suzuki gets the winner. That always weighs into my
I agree
3-star selection. Yeah. Hudson was terrific, and it's going to be a ton of fun, as we said. Suzuki, though, with the game winner and 2 helpers. So a 3-point night for him, 3-point night for Lane Hutson. And yes, JT Miller had a 4-point night, but in vain in terms of wins and losses. So certainly want to recognize his performance, but we've got JT slotted as the 3rd star of this hockey game. 3 stars are brought to you by Greta Bar YVR, and we've been talking about the next Canucks Army watch party. Circle the night of October the 23rd. That's when we look like we're going to get down to Greta with the Edmonton Oilers in town, or the Canucks in Edmonton. And so we'll have more details as we go here. But we always talk about Greta here on Rink Wide. We talk about all the big screens and the street food menu, the arcade games, weekly drink specials. They really do have it all. And hopefully you can join us for that next Canucks Army viewing party that's coming your way in a couple of weeks' time. Greta Bar, the place to be, 50 West Cordova, Greta Bar. Let the games begin. All right, we should mention a little bit more, because I see, if people haven't seen it on the broadcast, I've seen some people posting pictures of Quinn Hughes' left hand. And we saw it before the game. In fact, Amazon Prime with cameras all over the place, including the tunnel outside the Canucks locker room. And you were quick to pick up that as Quinn Hughes came off the ice for warm-up, popped the right glove off, no problem. Left glove was a little tougher for him to get off, and you could understand why. Ultimately, when it did, it looked like it was heavily taped. And then when he was out there on the ice, early shift, he took his glove off, and the cameras got a real view of what looked like a piece of hardware. So we still don't know the nature of the injury, but it's definitely his left hand. And this, I mean, it's great that he's back and he helps and he had the 2 points. And I'm not a doctor, but that looks like something that he's going to have to play with for a little while here, I would think.
I think the alternative would be he would be out for quite some time.
Yeah.
Right? You're looking at surgery or whatever it is to try and fix it. Obviously, rest. But if he is playing, he's playing through pain. There's no question about that. He's playing through some sort of injury. We know the history of hand injuries with this organization, and I'm pretty sure Quinn Hughes was the one guy that spoke up about Tanner Pearson's hand injury. Remember that, Jeff, when he talked about the way it was handled and things like that? Yep. But look, I think for what we're talking about right now, yes, their captain is hurt. There's no doubt about it. He is playing with an injury, but he is playing. And he is effective when he is playing. I mean, the guy eats minutes. He's so heavily dependent on. That's why I'm going back. I keep going back to my point about, this team and being able to put your best lineup in. Like, if you know that Quinn Hughes is hurt, if you know that he's, as you can see it right here, you know that Quinn Hughes is hurt, you know that he's battling something, you got to have another guy that can move the puck. You got to have Eric Brandstrom, right? You got to have him in the lineup. And even then, your offensive guys need to know that our captain's hurt. JT Miller did take the brunt of it, but guys like Brock Besser need to pick up their game. Connor Garland as well needs to pick up their game a bit. Jake DeBrusk, obviously, he leads the team in goals, but he's another guy that has to pick up the slack a little bit more, knowing that, their captain is battling injury.
We looked at some of the underlying numbers in this hockey game, and there were a bunch that weren't pretty. Let's be honest here. Teddy Bluger.
Yeah.
Individual Corsi of 20%. Shot attempts were 16-4 in favor of the Habs. The actual shots on goal were 5-0. The Canucks didn't generate a single shot on goal with Teddy Bluger on the ice, nor with Kiefer Sherwood. And look, Kiefer Sherwood has been terrific, and we've certainly given him his props along the way. It's a long season. They're not all going to be golden nights for a player like Kiefer Sherwood. 10 hits. That's great. I mean, the bodies were flying early on in this hockey game, but he was in the penalty box for a slash that led to the Kirby Dach power play goal. So tough one there for Kiefer Sherwood, and ultimately, as we said, outshot 5-0 at 5-on-5. You want to spend the majority of your shifts in the offensive zone, wear down defenders. That's what he does. 10 hits certainly helps in that regard. But it wasn't a banner night, I didn't think, for Kiefer Sherwood and Teddy Bluger. So. You take the good and you take the bad, and there's been way more good than bad with Kiefer Sherwood. But, I mean, I've lost track, quite frankly, of how many double-digit hit nights there have been
for Kiefer Sherwood.
But another one here. The final hit count was 35 for the Canucks, 28 for the Montreal Canadiens. And, man, that first period, I know they scored once, but puck seemed secondary at times. Like, bodies were flying. We talked about the goalie hit on Lekkerimaki, but like JT Miller finishing the check on Lane Hudson propelled him into the end boards. Good solid body check. And that was part of Miller's night. It wasn't just 2 goals, 2 assists, 4 points, 3 shots on goal, and 5 hits. Like, that's the dialed-in JT Miller that you want to see more of. The one area that he struggled, which isn't usually the case for him, won just 5 of 20 faceoffs.
Killed in the faceoff circle.
Yeah. Canucks end up winning 41% of the draws on the night, but a big part of that imbalance was JT going 5 and 15 on the draws there. So, we make a lot here in Vancouver about the first game back home after a lengthy road trip, and we know that over the years the Canucks have struggled with that. And when it was 3-1 Vancouver, I thought, okay, Montreal's just come off a 5-game road trip that started down in Florida, worked to places like Vegas, up to Chicago, ended in Colorado. Like, geographically, it was a bit of a weird road trip for the Montreal Canadiens. They went 4 for 5, the only loss in Chicago, of all places. And then I thought, okay, maybe maybe other teams suffer this as well. But no, in the end, this Montreal team finds that offensive gear needed to win this hockey game by a score of 5-4. And as we said, that's 8 wins now in their last 10 games. So look out for the hard-charging Montreal Canadiens.
Got a super chat. Cole Hulan. Love you guys and what you do. Really hope management makes a move sooner than later. Defense needs help. Need another difference maker up front. Defense needs a lot of help. And the difference maker up front, yes, definitely would have to agree. But the difference maker up front right now isn't playing because he's injured. Like, they have him. They have him there. And it's number 40, Elias Pettersson.
Thanks, Cole. That, of course, in support of the BC Mental Health Foundation. So we appreciate that. And as we said, Super Chats will get you right through to the top of the heap here on Rink Wide Vancouver. Yeah, what do we make? Elias Pettersson was back at practice on Sunday, stayed out after the morning skate. It was an optional skate in Montreal this morning. Day off tomorrow. Well, I don't know, it's a day off, but non-game day. And then into Washington for a game on Wednesday. I watched a little bit. The Canucks post a tiny little snippet of video from practice on Sunday, and EP40 looked like he was darting and dancing, and didn't look that far off, but he would know better than I would. So, the fact that he's on the ice and around the group, all of that seems promising. We thought that he would be back before Quinn Hughes, as it turns out, and for all the angst in the market, Quinn missed 4 games.
Yeah.
So, really, all things considered, like, it's a long season, and a lot of guys miss time. If Quinn Hughes can stay healthy the rest of the way, 4 games, and I know they only won 1 of them, but at one point we were led to believe it could be 3 weeks, it could be up to 10 games sort of thing. So to get Quinn back in 4, you'll take that. But now it's 5 games for Elias Pettersson. Haven't seen him since he left in the 3rd period against San Jose, the game before Christmas. So
did interview with IMAC.
He did chat.
He did chat, yeah.
And took some ownership of his struggles, which is good because remember earlier in the season when things weren't going well, and I remember Farhan talked to him, and it was Farhan by himself in the Canucks locker room, and Petey doesn't want to talk about his struggles, and I suck at hockey, and no, you don't. Obviously, you don't. But you could tell he was sort of pouting and didn't necessarily enjoy the scrutiny there. So I was glad to see him take ownership of his struggles, and he understands that one way to lower the temperature and the volume around this whole drama and around this team would be for him to get back and do what JT Miller did here tonight. Imagine if they both had this kind of night. I would imagine that would help the hockey club get the kind of result it's looking for as well. So, yes, we've heard from Elias Pettersson. We have seen Elias Pettersson. I just haven't seen him in uniform for a couple of weeks now. Yeah,
I think it's going to be interesting to see when he does decide to come back into the lineup and when he's going to be able to play, because they do go back-to-back again, right, after Washington into Carolina, and then against the Toronto Maple Leafs on Hockey Night in Canada there on Saturday night. So, yeah, he's there, he's skating. Is it just a matter of time of what he feels that it's going to get him over the edge, or see how his body is resting from whatever ailment or ailments that are bothering him at this point? But they desperately need him back.
5-4 in overtime. Montreal beats the Vancouver Canucks. This is Rink Wide Vancouver. I want to talk about Jonathan Lekkerimaki in a second, but back to the inbox here on Insta. Stiddle Austin says, what do you make of Quinn flexing his knee? Do you think it's because he hasn't been playing in games for a few weeks? They cut to Quinn Hughes at one point where he had lost his skate blade, and for a split second you're thinking, what's wrong? He can't stand up. It was just an equipment issue. I don't know if that's what Stiddle Austin's referring to. I didn't get a sense. There
was a moment towards either the end of the 3rd or at the beginning of overtime.
Yes, it's Jacob.
Yes. That is Jacob Lazar, our producer behind the scenes. Okay. So
yes, there was a moment where the broadcast showed him kind of stretching. I think it was in the 3rd period on the power play when they tied the game, actually. I think it showed him flexing his knee out a little bit before the face-off.
Oh, all right. I missed that. Lots going on in the night. Somehow that slipped past me. Well, he played a lot, 26-15.
Yeah,
he was rested. I didn't get a sense that there was an injury issue there. Certainly hope not. A lot more fun when Quinn Hughes is in the lineup as opposed to when he's on the shelf, and we're wondering when he's going to get back in there. All right, a bit of a surprise to start the day with the Canucks out east. They put out a tweet early in the morning that Dakota Joshua had been placed on IR, and Jonathan Lekkerimaki had been recalled on an emergency basis. So Joshua, we all saw what happened. We talked about it the other night against Nashville, second period. Teddy Bluger kind of shoves Roman Josi, and Josi looked like he clipped Dakota Joshua. Joshua left the game, came back in the third period and finished. And so we kind of thought, I guess we were wrong, that that was the end of that. But Canucks haven't specified, as they usually don't, the nature of the injury. I know he got in the fight with Michael McCarron in the first period, but I'm guessing, I think it's a logical conclusion to assume that it was from
the Josi kind of
and
freak play.
Now, Talkett was asked about it after the morning skate, said week to week. We've heard that a fair bit, but Quinn was listed as week to week and missed 4 games. So Talkett said he didn't think it was a long-term kind of thing, that he didn't know for sure. So let's hope that it doesn't derail. Dakota Joshua has been through enough already this season. It's been a struggle for him as he's returned from the cancer diagnosis. And I agree with the coach that I do think the last couple of games, Joshua was starting to find his physical form, not just in the fight, but remember in the Seattle game, got into a couple of skirmishes.
Some hits,
Yeah, and so Talkett also said, we need that element. And when you saw a game like this one where bodies were flying, it can't always be on Kiefer Sherwood. And so they're going to miss, they're not a robust forward group outside of Kiefer Sherwood and JT Miller when Miller is on his game. Other than that, there isn't a ton of sort of that feistiness among the Canucks forwards. So, I think that they will miss Dakota Joshua. So let's hope that for his sake, he's missed enough time already this year and been through enough that this is just a short stay on the IR.
I don't care about this, but I know a lot of old school hockey people do. Whenever someone leaves a clean hit, there has to be retribution for it, especially if it's a young player. Any problem with Caden Gooley and Lekkerimaki and nobody doing really anything there?
No, I thought it was sort of a textbook body check,
100%.
Young player.
He got fed.
Maybe he had his head down, and it's not the AHL kid.
Nope.
But to his credit, he popped back up, and that leads us right into a little bit of discussion about Lekkerimaki.
Yeah.
Again, this is a guy that scores goals wherever he goes. That's why he was a first-round draft pick. And for the struggles that Nils Höglander has had putting the puck in the net and the struggles that Dakota Joshua has had regaining his form, Lekkerimaki has 2 goals in 6 NHL games now. He's tied with Höglander and Joshua on the season. Different player types, I get that, but this is what you want from him. And again, he kind of had the puck roll off his stick, gets an assist on the Miller goal, but 20 seconds later, off the rush, with Tyler Myers, the 2-on-1, I think the kid made the right call to hold on to the puck. And this much we know about him, he can shoot it. And so a right shot guy coming in on the left holds on to the puck and then snaps it home. You want to see more of it. I mean, both of his goals have sort of come from that
exact same spot
on the ice.
Yeah.
And that's a great sign for him to get the recall and to get that feeling of scoring goals at the NHL level. Again, if Joshua's out for a little while, I would assume that Lekkermaki's not coming out of the lineup. Even if Petey comes back, I think you're looking at depth guys further down the lineup that'll sit, and Lekkerimaki will continue to play.
Yeah, I like that elevated role for Lekkerimaki, right? You're putting him in a position to succeed. You're not, throwing him somewhere in the bottom of the lineup where he's going to have no chance of having that offensive success where he is so gifted and able to put the puck in the net. But you mentioned Tyler Myers. He got up on the rush a couple times in this game, did he not, Jeff?
Well, and man, can the game be a game of inches sometimes. To start the third period off to the races and rings it off the inside of the post. The Canucks were up 3-2 at that point. He goes 4-2.
He thought he scored, too.
He did. He had a little celebration there. Who knows? I mean, there were a lot of goals being scored in this hockey game, so I don't know that 4-2 and the way the Canucks have protected leads, but still, what might have been had they been able to extend the lead. So, yeah, Tyler Myers, another big night of ice time for him, 20 minutes and 55 seconds. Not as high as it has been, obviously, with Quinn coming back. But just back to Lekkerimaki for a sec. A goal and an assist, +2 on the night. 13 minutes and 47 seconds of ice time, so manageable. 11 seconds on the power play, and 3 shots on goal. Volume shooter. You want to see him shooting the puck, and scores his second in the National Hockey League. So I'm curious to see. He got up for 5 games earlier, scored the goal against the Islanders. That was his only point. You could see the last couple of games that he was playing, or that he played here in that first stint, it looked like he had kind of hit the first rookie wall that most guys do. So they send him back to Abbotsford. He continued to score down there. Abbotsford was out in the Montreal area, so it was an easy call up and join the team and plays here, and now will carry on to Washington. But I'm curious to what did he take away from those first 5 games that he applied down in Abbotsford, and now when he gets the call back up, like, is he going to be a better play for it? You hope so, and certainly, if it's about confidence, to get a goal in his first game back, I mean, it should do a world of good, I would think, for the young guy's confidence.
He did that intermission interview with Thomas Hickey, and Hickey asked him, was it shoot all the way? And he said, yeah. And I think that's a very encouraging sign for a young hockey player, where you want that shoot first mentality, where he knows he's not afraid. He doesn't have to give it up to someone else, or doesn't feel like he needs to pass to, a more veteran guy on the team. Your job's to put the puck in the back of the net. And that's what they brought you up for. And I'm sure that's what the message was. If you find a spot and if you find a place where you're comfortable, go and shoot it. We do have JT Miller and Rick Tocchet, Jeff. Which would you like to hear from? We have both the head coach and JT Miller.
Well, let's hear from the coach first. I'm always curious. We read a few of Rick Tocchet's quotes, but want to hear from the coach in his own words after a 5-4 overtime loss to start the road trip in Montreal.
Disappointing to be up 3-1 and not get both.
Well, it's disappointing. The 3-1, we kind of gave them the goal. We were just kind of a little bit soft on a couple of plays, and they get a screenshot. We double screen in front. I think if we can get out of the period 3-1, maybe it settles some guys down. But I thought that we gave them that goal, and then it gives them a little bit of life.
Why do you think the team is so different with leading the third period this year? Is it just
Well, I think there's confidence. I think there's moments when you need a guy to make a play. It seems like when a team puts pressure on us, sometimes we just start slapping pucks around when you should want the puck. If your buddy has the puck, you got to hang in there for him and want the puck. Sometimes there's going to be some contacts where you're going to have to go to an area and have contact to get it out. I think sometimes we're a little shy going to that area sometimes. But, we're working on it. We'll continue to work on it. We got a point. Disappointed to give it up, but we got to move on.
you get the big game from JT?
Yeah.
Since Christmas, do you feel like just generally his two-way game has been sort of trending in the right direction?
Yeah, he's trying to do the right things. I mean, he's had a tough start with training camp. A couple things were bothering him. Obviously, when he was out for about a month, he's starting to front his game. That was, he played a hell of a game for us tonight.
That Montreal team, in terms of their rush attack, and it's pretty deliberate. Like they'll do some of those roller hockey breakouts too.
Yeah.
How difficult are they to defend?
No, it's good. There's some speed. We just have some individually. You got to stop skating backwards. You gotta gap up, and you got to be confident in your gap ups. When you back up against teams like that, they're a quick team. They're going to get speed at the Blues, so you got to have confidence in the system and yourself to gap up. So I just felt a couple guys. It just takes a guy or two on a line to back up, and it's like a chain effect. But we got to keep working on that.
Encouraging to see Lekkerimaki's.
Yeah, it was a nice goal. I thought he held his own tonight. He's been playing well down there. Hell of a shot. That's his gift. So hopefully he builds off that.
All right, there you go. Rick Tocchet, as we said, we read the quotes, but to hear him talk about slapping the puck around and, sometimes your buddy, you got to support your buddy. And, hard to disagree with the coach's assessment after a game where they give up 5 again. And, that's just been the story of this season, is how many times the Canucks have given up 5 and 6 goals. It just didn't happen last year when they protected the guts of the ice and the staples and everything else. And it's great that they got 4, but when the other guys get 5, it kind of dampens the spirits of everybody. They can try and sell you the single point that they got and all that, but
got to gap up.
You do have to gap up, and they're going to have to be better as this road trip moves along. All right, we're going to hear from JT Miller as well.
We have JT Miller. It's a little bit shorter
night for JT Miller. We haven't heard from him an awful lot since Christmas. I think he's been trying to sort of stay as low profile as he can. His name is certainly mentioned an awful lot, but we haven't heard from JT. Certainly heard from him on the ice with his 4 points. Here's JT Miller after the loss in Montreal.
It's a frustrating result, especially being up 3-1.
Yeah, we had a good push there. We need to be able to hold on to leads like that. Have to be comfortable with a lead. Seems we're unfortunately a little less comfortable than than before. And, they had a really good second period push, and, we didn't really have an answer. I thought wasn't all bad, but still, 2-goal lead, we should be able to lock that down.
What did you see from Jonathan Besser in your line?
It's nice to produce a little bit, but thought Lex looked good, brought some energy. Happy he got on the score sheet.
When you guys were waiting on the bench following the game winner, what was the discussion about?
Oh, I think maybe we thought there was a little contact. I'm not 100% sure.
Just in terms of the flow of that game, first minute goes poorly for your club, but you were able to take the lead. Seemed like your line's two-way game was probably at a level you'd be happy with despite the result. Do you think your two-way game generally has been tracking well across the last 4 or 5 games, maybe since Christmas?
As a team?
As a team, but also you personally.
Yeah, I don't. Listen, I don't think the two-way has been, a huge problem. It's not like I'm stuck in my own end all night. Personally, I just think that, obviously the production's been a little tougher to come by as of late. So, obviously, when you spend more time in the other team's end, you don't have to play defense and you get more of a rhythm. So, it's nice to see a couple go in. But as a team, I think it just needs to be a little more consistency. I think we have these spurts in games where the other team takes control of a little bit, and we have a hard time of stopping that momentum and flipping it quickly. And that's just, I'm not worried about myself. I'm just worried about the team.
There you go. Pretty good summation, I think, of the problems of this club. And it is. Yeah. It's these 5, 6, 7-minute stretches where the other team gets a couple, and Canucks are sent reeling. And yes, they responded with the power play goal. And we should point out that Cole Caulfield, well, he scored his 22nd. He was the guilty party with the slash that put the Canucks in the power play. And then Jake DeBrusk with his 17th, his team-leading 17th, not even at the midway mark. This is game 39. So DeBrusk certainly trending for 30-plus this year. And I know goals will be tougher to come by in the second half of the season, but after the slow start, he has been what the Canucks had hoped he would be when they went out and signed him to the long-term ticket in the offseason.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that, look, JT Miller is obviously going to be disappointed after a loss like that. And I think that, Thomas Drance was asking him questions about his two-way game and things like that. He knows he's really never been guy to blame in this defensive end and things like that. It's the offensive game, and when he doesn't put up points that we're used to seeing him put up, that's where you question his game as a total. So good for him for being able to get back on that score sheet, and this team hope that he can continue it down in Washington.
Well, we'll see what happens Wednesday in Washington. Let's get to the stat that stands out. It involves JT Miller, and he ends up a point off his career high. He had a 5-point night, 5 assists as a member of the Canucks in Arizona a couple of years ago. This is the 9th career 4-point game for JT Miller. So been there and done that. I'd have to go back and look how many times his 4 points have contributed to a victory. You could see that he wasn't thrilled, obviously, with the outcome. But I do hope that this is a springboard for him. He said it's been a little too quiet offensively. Maybe this will be a breakout game. And on this road trip against the level of opponent that the Canucks are facing, they're going to need big nights from JT Miller. Hopefully get Elias Pettersson back and he'll find his game and get some of the reinforcements. People have been saying, wait till they get healthy. And then you get the Dakota Joshua news. And that's the difficulty in pro sports is you can say, hey, wait till we're healthy. You can be waiting a long, long time. So knock on wood that there aren't many more injuries and that they can get a run of health here and see what this team looks like when it is all together. But they're going to have to get by without Dakota Joshua now. And still, Thatcher Demko was on the ice again this morning, but didn't serve as the backup. So we'll see what Wednesday brings. But I would imagine that Kevin Lankinen probably is the guy on Wednesday. And then you look at one of the games, the back-to-backs later in the week for Thatcher Demko to make his return to the net. I told you a little bit earlier about our next Canucks Army viewing party. Again, a little bit more here. It's brought to you by Fountain Tire. It's the Canucks in Edmonton on January 23rd. Great rivalry, playoffs last year. Going to be exciting giveaways, hockey tickets, signed memorabilia, jerseys to be won. The doors open at 5, puck drops at 6 o'clock. Each ticket grants you access to all the action, and it's all in support of One Broken Biker. VIP 4-person reservations include entry to the event, a Greta burger and beverage, plus a game card. Don't miss out. Secure your spot now at nationgear.ca for an action-packed night with the Canucks Army crew. Again, that's happening on January 23rd, the Canucks in Edmonton. We'll preview what's coming up here in a sec. The Canucks into Washington, and that's going to be a challenge the way the Capitals are going, although they lost in a shootout in Buffalo. Interesting shootout. We'll touch on that in a sec. But before we do any of that, let's get to the line of the night. I know you're keeping an eye on things that are happening around the National Hockey League, Irf. So what do you have in your sights for the Bet365 line of the night?
Yeah, a lot of interesting things to take a look at. Portion of the show, again, like you just mentioned, brought to you by Bet365, proud partner of Sekeres and Price Canucks Conversation. Jeff, you and I here at Rink Wide Vancouver. You open an account with Bet365 today. Bet on a huge range of markets. Use the code NATION. Whatever the moment's never ordinary at Bet365. This is what I like to call teams catching the Canucks parlay, or looking to catch the Canucks. You take the St. Louis Blues over the Minnesota Wild. I think the Blues are playing well, like of late. They've got that coaching change. They started to figure things out a little bit. Brandon Sato's a healthy scratch. They got a hat trick the other night. So, and the Flames over the Ducks. You mentioned the Ducks and them kind of playing well lately, and being a team that's kind of there in it. But we'll go with the Calgary Flames. So those two together gives you some pretty good odds.
Yeah, the Ducks have won 4 of 5, and I was looking at it. Now, the Canucks get a single point, and that changes things, but prior to this game, the Canucks were actually closer to Anaheim in the standings than they were to the Los Angeles Kings or the Edmonton Oilers, and that speaks about the season the Canucks have had, but also a team like Anaheim that is kind of quietly figuring some things out, and got a ton of young talent, obviously, but we'll see if they can take down the Calgary Flames. If the Blues and the Flames are both the winners, and you hit on your parlay, that's not good news necessarily for the Vancouver Canucks, who will have a day to get ready for the Washington Capitals. We mentioned the fact that the Caps lost 4-3 in a shootout. Ovi didn't get a shootout. It went 4 rounds, and Ovi wasn't one of the Capitals' shooters, but 2 defensemen were. Tom Wilson, Tom Wilson's not a defenseman. John Carlson and Jacob Chychrun. And Chychrun's having an incredible season.
Yeah.
But 2 defensemen in your 4 shootout shooters, and neither one of them scored. That certainly leaves the coach open to a little bit of questioning there. Canucks are going to see the Capitals twice this month, on Wednesday there, and then here on Saturday the 25th. So that'll be Ovi's one and only visit of the regular season. Now, this Washington team, 26-10-4 on the season, 13-4-3 at home. So that's part of the challenge facing the Vancouver Canucks. And Ovi, at 39 years, is back in the lineup, has 19 goals on the season, 872 for his career, so he's 22 back of Wayne Gretzky. Does he have 22 in the second half of the season? I mean, he's certainly on that kind of pace, and we'll see. 16 goals in 26 career games against the Vancouver Canucks, so he scored against everybody. Yeah, he scored 16 times against the Canucks. Capitals are the second highest scoring team in the league behind Tampa. They have 6 30-point guys on their roster.
It's crazy.
I mentioned Tom Wilson. He had 2 of the goals in Buffalo. He's up to 18 on the season. You've got Ovi. You've got Dylan Strome, Connor McMichael, Alexei Protas, who is a giant. If people don't know, he played in the Western League for Prince Albert. I watched him in the Western League final against the Vancouver Giants back in 2019. Guy was like 6'6" then, playing against other teenagers. Now, there's lots of big guys in the NHL. Yeah. He is definitely one of them, but he's got 18 goals as well. Pierre-Luc Dubois, like they go deep here. 7 double-digit goal scorers, including former Canuck Nick Dowd, who's got 10 on the season. And if that's not enough, the second highest scoring defense in the NHL behind only Colorado. I bet you didn't know that. Like, you don't think, when you think of the Washington Capitals, and you think of high-scoring defenses, I'm not sure that you think necessarily of the Caps, but they get guys up front. They got guys on the back end. Chychrun's 11 goals and 27 points. John Carlson's right there behind him. Rasmus Sandin. On and on it goes.
I think John Carlson got career point 700 against the Buffalo Sabres.
And they were without Matt Roy for a while, and he's going to get up there, too, into double digits. I'm sure they alternate goaltending. Charlie Lindgren and Logan Thompson. Lindgren was in goal tonight, so I would assume that Thompson gets the call against the Canucks. That's not confirmed, but they basically have been alternating. Spencer Carberry doing a terrific job behind the bench of the Washington Capitals. It's not just Ovi. It's a powerhouse hockey club that looks like it means business. So it's going to be a handful for the Canucks on Wednesday.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, look, they got a plus 40 goal differential as well, the Washington Capitals, only three behind the Winnipeg Jets, who also score a lot of goals. So, yeah, I mean, it's a great task for the Vancouver Canucks. You want to measure yourself up against teams in the West and be the team that you think you can be. You're going through a gauntlet of good hockey teams right now. So, yes, you're riddled with injury, but, you know, I mean, steal a line from Rick Rick Tocchet here, meet pressure with pressure, right? So you're going to go in and see what you're really made of, and you hope you can get some good goaltending. You hope you get contributions from guys that aren't named JT Miller and Quinn Hughes, and kind of see what happens.
Yeah, support your buddies, gap up,
gap up, baby.
I mean, so much happened as this night went along that another crappy start sort of feels like a footnote, but a minute and 7 seconds in. Last week in Seattle, I think it was 1:52 in. It happens so often to this Vancouver Canuck hockey club, and you just wonder. Again, when we talk about things, it's the players on the ice, but
it's coaching
this
too.
Many times, I think this is the 8th time that they've given up a goal in the first 5 minutes, not even at the midway mark of the season, and it's happened in 8 occasions, and readiness and preparation and all that kind of stuff. Like they all have to know it, and yet kind of stand around and wait for the other team to dictate, and then they settle in, and they did in this hockey game as well. And I thought over the second half of the first period, they started to take the play to the. I mean, they only had 4 shots in the first period, but I thought they stabilized things at least when Miller scored, and then 2 goals 20 seconds apart. You kind of thought right there like that could have been a dagger, but nope. And Rick Tocchet pointed to that Caden Gooley goal. We really didn't talk. We talked about a lot of the other goals. The Gooley goal that made it 3-2 midway through the second came at the end of a long shift for Noah Juleson and Carson Soucy. It started with a bad pinch in the offensive zone. Puck goes the other way, and then the Canucks never touch it. It was the Suter, DeBrusk, Garland line. We talked about them having a tough night, and that was part of it there. And I mean, Rick says, hey, if they get to the third with a 3-1 lead, fine, fair enough, but there were still 10 minutes to go in that. Like, they had to play better than they were in the middle stages of the second period there, so it kind of felt like a bit of a pipe dream to think that they were going to get out of that period with a 3-1 lead, and ultimately Gooley with a point shot, traffic in front of the net, layered screen, and it finds its way to the back of the net. So that got a little momentum going, and it allowed Montreal to wrestle the lead back, ultimately take a lead, and then the Canucks were able to tie things up. Back and forth they went, but at the end of the night, only one team scored 5 goals, and it was not the Vancouver Canucks.
Yeah, bend, don't break, but the Canucks have been breaking a lot when they've been bending lately. So.
Well, and speaking of bending but not breaking, Derek Forbert's right leg there.
Didn't look too good. He came back.
He did come back, but so did Dakota Joshua the other night.
That's
so let's,
true.
Let's see where this goes. It's been a hard luck season for Derek Forbert, and honestly, I thought his night was done. I mean, putting no weight on that right leg. He got tangled up with Alex Newhook in the neutral zone. A bit of a freakish play, and I thought he was done. So another indication these guys they're tough guys, and we know that. But we'll see how that leg feels moving forward. They do have some extra bodies on the back end, and we'll see if one of those is required for the game in Washington. Look, this was a fun night of hockey. I mean, there was a lot going on. So we should mention that these two teams will see each other again March 11th here in Vancouver. And I dropped a box score earlier in the day on my social feed from a game. It was December of 2022. Bruce was still the coach then, and it had all the hallmarks of a Bruce Boudreau game. Canucks fell behind 4-0, and then took a 5-4 lead, then fell behind 6-5 and needed a late Andrei Kuzmenko goal with the goaltender pulled. And then Petey, remember when he picked the pocket of Mike Matheson in overtime?
Yeah.
And scored 7-6 was the final. So this one wasn't 7-6, but wasn't that far off either. 9 goals, not 13. So who knows what these two teams will produce when they meet again on the 11th of March. Habs go 2 for 4 with the power play. Canucks 1 for 3. The DeBrusk goal coming with the man advantage. Final shots in the hockey game, 24-20. Just 1 shot in overtime, and that's all it took. Nick Suzuki with his 12th of the year from Lane Hudson and Cole Caulfield, the winner at the 48-second mark. The Vancouver Canucks just 1 win in 5 games since the Christmas break. They're taking on water, and they're climbing uphill. Washington, Carolina, Toronto, and Winnipeg to round out this gauntlet of a road trip. We'll be back with our next episode of Rink Wide Vancouver on Wednesday after the Canucks and the Caps, and we'll see how this Vancouver team defends against the high-scoring Capitals, and, of course, a lot of eyes on Alexander Ovechkin. All right, that's going to do it for us. We had Jacob working hard behind the scenes. Irf, thank you for your help.
Absolutely. Yep.
And we'll be back to do it again on Wednesday. Canucks fall 5-4 in overtime in Montreal. That's going to do it for this episode of Rink Wide Vancouver.